Imagine walking into a quiet pawn shop, dressed in worn-out jeans and a faded hoodie, just trying to keep your head down. That's where this story begins. A single dad, a veteran, carrying not just the weight of his past battles but also the heavier responsibility of raising his little girl alone. He wasn't looking for pity, he was just searching for a way to make her smile. And that's when he asked a question that made everyone in the room laugh, until the truth came out and silenced them all. If you're watching right now, stick with me until the end. I promise this story will touch your heart. And if it does, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because we share stories here that remind us what real courage, love, and resilience look like. The man's name was Daniel. Once, he had stood tall in uniform, serving his country with pride. But wars don't end when soldiers come home. They carry invisible scars, the kind you can't patch up with a bandage. For Daniel, life after service was a battlefield of its own. Nights haunted by memories, days filled with odd jobs that barely covered rent. The one thing that gave him strength was his daughter, Lily, a bright-eyed little girl who was his entire world. Money was tight. Most nights Daniel skipped dinner so Lily could have an extra helping. He'd sell anything he had if it meant she didn't go without. On this particular day, he'd come to the pawn shop to trade an old wristwatch, hoping to scrape together enough to buy Lily a birthday gift. But as he waited, his eyes fell on something in the corner, a dusty, neglected piano. It wasn't much to look at, chipped wood, a few keys yellowed with age. But to Daniel, it wasn't just an instrument. It was a doorway to a past he'd buried. Before the army, before life got so hard, he'd been a pianist. Not just a hobbyist, he was once called a prodigy, someone who could make keys sing, who could pour emotion into every note. He had left all of that behind when duty called, never touching a piano again after returning from war. Daniel turned to the man behind the counter and asked softly, "Can I play it? Just once. For my daughter." The shop clerks exchanged glances and chuckled. To them, he looked like any other tired, broke man. They thought he was joking, maybe even desperate for attention. "Sure, buddy," one of them smirked, "knock yourself out." Daniel sat down, his fingers trembling as they hovered over the keys. Lily tugged on his sleeve, her eyes wide with curiosity. And then, the first note rang out. The laughter stopped. What came next was nothing short of breathtaking. The dusty old shop seemed to transform. Daniel's hands danced across the keys with a power and grace that made time stand still. The melody was raw, filled with the weight of his struggles, the pain of his sacrifices, and the endless love he carried for his daughter. It wasn't just music, it was his soul speaking. Customers in the shop stopped what they were doing. A woman pulled out her phone to record. Even the clerks who had laughed were now frozen, tears welling in their eyes. Lily's face lit up brighter than any gift money could buy. She clapped her little hands, beaming with pride. "Daddy, you're amazing," she whispered. Word spread fast. That recording made its way online, and overnight Daniel went from just another struggling single dad to a viral sensation. People couldn't believe the depth of his talent, the story behind the music. Offers came pouring in, invites to perform, interviews, even scholarships for Lily. Suddenly, the man who couldn't afford his daughter's birthday present was being celebrated as a piano legend. But what made Daniel's journey powerful wasn't fame. It was what he chose to do with it. He used his second chance not to chase fortune but to build a future for Lily. He gave free lessons to kids whose parents couldn't afford music school. He visited veteran centers, playing for men and women who knew his pain all too well, reminding them they weren't alone. Through music, he found healing, not just for himself, but for countless others. And perhaps the most beautiful part. Every time Daniel sat at the piano, Lily was there beside him. Sometimes she'd sing, sometimes she'd just watch in awe, but always with that same spark in her eyes, the spark of a little girl who knew her father was a hero, not just because of his service, but because he never stopped fighting for her happiness. So, the next time you see someone struggling, remember this: you might be looking at a hidden legend, someone carrying a story you couldn't imagine. Daniel taught us that no matter how broken life gets, the music inside us never dies, it just waits for the right moment to be heard. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories that prove the human spirit is stronger than anything life throws our way. Because sometimes, the smallest act of faith, a father asking, "Can I play it for my daughter?" can change everything.